Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexis Bartholomew, and I am the Director of Statewide Training at Florida Legal Services. I hope you all enjoyed a long weekend, bringing you back restful and restorative for all the work we have ahead. And thank you for joining us on your day back to learn more about fair housing and this particular topic. For those of you who have joined us on previous sessions, welcome back. For those of you who are new, this is the final session of our 2024 Fair Housing Bootcamp. There have been 6 sessions talking about our LGBTQ plus rights, VAWA, immigration, and here we are today to talk about fair housing when it comes to familial status protections. Before we move into the introductions of our speakers and into the content, I always want to give you some housekeeping announcements. This is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be sent to all of you who are registered. This was also approved for CLE credit, as each session of this training series has been independently approved for CLE credit. I will announce the CLE code for this one at the end of today's content. I will also put that CLE code into the chat, and that will also come to you with that recording that will come to you via email after the event. So don't worry, if you don't write down the code, you'll get it in one way or another. Either way, I'm going to drop my email address into the chat. If you need anything, if you don't see that email, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me directly. Final piece of housekeeping announcement, actually, I lie. Second to last piece of housekeeping announcement, closed captioning is enabled for you. If you have any issues setting that up, please let me know and I will assist you. And finally, questions and answers. Please don't be shy. We know it can be tough in the virtual vortex, but we love to hear from you. And especially in this training series, we've really enjoyed fostering the thoughtful and meaningful conversation that you all have brought to the floor each and every time. So thank you for your past participations in our questions and answers. And let's, end the session with a really great question and answer in this final session of our training series. And so moving into introductions, again, for those of you who have been with us already, we have back with us Joseph Cordova and Pia Molina. For those of you who are new, I'm going to drop, I already did, I'm sorry, I dropped Pia and Joseph's bios into the chat. That way you can read them because we have a lot of stuff to talk about today and we're going to jump right into it. But Pia, Joseph, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being just an important member of Florida Legal Services. I remind everybody that this is a Florida Legal Services all-inclusive event. You get me, you get Joe, you get Pia, you had Erica in our VAWA training last week. So thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for working with me. And the floor is yours. I look forward to learning from you today.
Thank you so much. I'll just say a quick hello. It's nice to see everybody again. And we were just commenting before we logged in that we're so happy with the high attendance to all of these bootcamp sessions for 6 weeks in a row. Cannot thank you guys enough. This is such a big deal for us to help us get the word out about fair housing and all the intricacies and details of this, the Fair Housing Act. And then I also want to make sure I point out that Alexis does a fantastic job posting all of these videos to our YouTube channel. So if you know somebody, a fellow advocate, a colleague that might benefit from these, please check out the Florida Legal Services YouTube channel where all of these bootcamp sessions will be posted once we're done here. So with that, today we're talking about fair housing and familial status protections. And then at the end, we'll do kind of a recap of the last 6 sessions and where do we go from here. So I'm going to pass it on to Pia. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Yeah, we can get started. So once again, we're going to start just with a small reminder of what the Fair Housing Act is today. So it is the Federal Fair Housing Act that we're talking about and that we've been talking about for these 6 weeks. It prohibits discrimination in housing-related transactions because of the 7 federally protected classes. That's race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, and what we're talking about today is familial status. So recently added or enforced through one of the laws that Joe talked about when we talked about LGBTQ rights. It includes under the sex protection, sexual orientation, and gender identity. That's due to a Supreme Court case. And yeah, and then we can go on to the next one. So today we're going to be talking about the familial status protection. In 2021, familial status claims of discrimination totaled 2,261, making it the third least frequent basis for complaint. In 2022, Fair Housing Trend reports the term familial status is only mentioned 3 times, making it the least discussed protected class throughout the report. The often believed 2 hearts per bedroom rule is not recognized by the Fair Housing Act as a binding law, but it is instead a general rule for guidance. And the Keating Memo of 1998 advises that the occupancy decisions need to factor in the size of the bedroom and unit, the ages of the children, configuration of a bedroom and unit, and other relevant factors, including pretextual discrimination statements and policies. I don't know if you want to say more about the Keating. Cool. So oftentimes
I will a little bit, yeah.
yeah. Oftentimes, building codes are used as a reason to deny families with children, but when measured against the protections of the Fair Housing Act, the building codes themselves may be promoting differential treatment and are thus in violation of the Fair Housing Act. I know Joe in the past has said that if that's the case, the federal law will kind of outshine the local building codes, and so we can always as Florida Fair Housing, the Fair Housing Project, if it's in our region, we can always take that on and kind of challenge those if that's what's kind of keeping from navigating the bedroom situation for a family. 55 plus communities are not required to accept families with children. The 80-20 rule does not require these communities to leave open 20% of their homes with children, but merely allows them to do so if the 55 plus community determines that such a policy and practice. Familial status includes pregnant and expecting families, families in the process of adoptions, or families securing custody of a child. It includes all shapes and sizes of families with children under the age of 18, be it through adoption, grandparents with custody, or legal guardians. And so I guess noting back on why it's one of the least claimed ones, because of the confusion surrounding what familial status protections are, many families are unaware of their rights and therefore do not exercise them. Families are often left to find houses in a limited pool of vacancies and neighborhoods, and families who rent are forced to do so in neighborhoods that are not convenient for work or where education choices might be minimal. Communities might become more segregated based on tenants with and without children, impacting the types of services and resources available to them in the communities. And so again, for another brief review of the other protected classes, race includes your lineage and where your family might be from. Color is differentiated in the law in the Fair Housing Act, and that is considered the literal color of your skin and features. Sex, as mentioned, includes both sexual orientation and gender identity, but it also is considering sexual harassment. And last week they were talking about the domestic violence treatment, and that's protected again under sex here. National origin is where you or your family might be from. This includes, speaking a different language. Families with children, that's what we're talking about today, familial status, and that it includes all sorts of families securing custody of children. Religion is whether you practice a religion or not. And disability is, the disability is either mental or physical. And it includes, things like reasonable accommodations, emotional support animals, and any caretakers that are taking care of the person with the disability. Everyone has these protected classes, and it's not necessarily a minority status.
All right, so let's dive a little further into familial status. So familial status means the presence of children under 18 in the household, okay? This includes pregnant women, persons in the process of adopting or securing custody of a child and children. So let's pause there for a moment. So I ask this a lot of times when we do full day workshops. And we go through the concept of disability, which is any impediment to a major life activity. And I'll ask the audience, what about pregnancy? Is pregnancy considered a disability under the Fair Housing Act? Well, under the Fair Housing Act, pregnancy is not a disability. Under the ADA, it is a disability. If you are in a employment interview and the employer asks about whether or not you're pregnant, that's probably a violation of the ADA for disability reasons. It's also a violation of equal employment opportunity laws or employment. Under the Fair Housing Act, though, pregnancy is covered under familial status protections. Okay. Now look at what we set up above. It means the presence of children under 18 in the household. It does not say anything about traditional nuclear family, okay, or nucleus family, I'm sorry, family. It doesn't say anything in regards to children living with their parents. So this can be grandparents. This can be parents who are taking care of nieces and nephews. This can be anyone whose household includes children under the age of 18. Landlords and housing providers are not supposed to push back on the shape, size of a family and who is related to who and all of that kind of stuff. This includes foster children, grandchildren, so long as the person had legal custody or written permission. So a lot of times a housing provider might try to push back on that and say, well, technically you're not the legal guardian, so we're not going to allow for that. Fair Housing Act doesn't say anything in regards to as long as you can prove that's your child, okay? Children in the household. Now, there might be some issues regarding other laws. There might be some issues regarding the size of family and stuff like that that might butt up against certain laws, but we're just talking about children in the household under the age of 18. The biggest pushback on families with children is occupancy limits by building codes. Just like Pia mentioned earlier, you might live in a community where the county building code, health code, safety code say 2 people per bedroom is all we can allow for. But the Keating memo, which is, I believe, 1992, I think that's what we said earlier. The Keating memo basically said this is the foundation. It's the beginning of the guidance for HUD. It is not a one size fits all, 2 people per bedroom. That is the rule, no exceptions. It's a rebuttable presumption. So imagine you have a family, a young couple that just got married and they're expecting, and they live in a 1-bedroom apartment and they have a baby. And the housing provider landlord says, I'm sorry, that's now 3 people in your 1-bedroom apartment. I'm going to need you guys to upgrade to 2 bedrooms. You can push back on that. Because remember, just like we talked about in the previous weeks under disability accommodations, in order to deny an accommodation or really to violate the Fair Housing Act and get away with it, you have to be able to back it up with a legitimate business purpose. So if you're going to say, I'm sorry, it's our policy, 2 people per bedroom, you guys now have 3 people living in this bedroom, you have to be able to say, how is your business affected by this? Is that newborn more wear and tear on a 1-bedroom apartment? Is that newborn using more electricity and plumbing? Is that newborn going to go find another place to rent, but instead they're just bunking up with mom and dad, but otherwise they would be a single tenant somewhere else? No, you're not losing any money because a newborn baby is in a 1-bedroom apartment with mom and dad. You have to be able to back it up with that business reason that says, our numbers show that it's costing our business a lot of money if we allow newborns to be in a 1-bedroom apartment with their mom and dad. But let's twist the scenario. What if mom and dad are, a young couple, they're expecting, and surprise, surprise, it's triplets. And now you have triplets in a 1-bedroom apartment with mom and dad. Okay, maybe now we have an issue. Are those newborn triplets using extra plumbing and electricity? Probably not. They're also not going to, the 3 of them, move out anytime soon and get their own apartment. But you can see where this kind of like, where do you draw the line? We're getting closer and closer. I've heard a lot of housing providers say, well, we don't charge extra for a newborn, we say that they have to move to a 2-bedroom apartment once the baby turns 2 or once the baby turns 3. That's our policy. All right, we appreciate that you opened the door and you extended it a couple of years until it's more of a toddler. But you still have to be able to back it up with a business reason. If it's a single child 2-year-old and your policy says at age 2, we make you upgrade to a 2-bedroom apartment, why? What does your business numbers say that at 2 years old, suddenly our business is losing money? What if the 2-year-old co-sleeps with mom and dad and doesn't need another bed? Is that 2-year-old potty trained and using extra plumbing? Is that 2-year-old really causing a lot more wear and tear in a 1-bedroom apartment? Whereas in a 2-bedroom apartment, the business is no longer, affected by what the 3 people in 1 bedroom would be affected by. Go back to the scenario where I said they were triplets. Now you have triplets turning the age of 2. All right, now it might make more sense to have that 2nd bedroom. So just like everything we've been saying over the past 5-6 weeks is your housing provider wants to be able to back it up with a legitimate business purpose, and they want to get rid of any no exception policies. The words no exception is a recipe for violation of the Fair Housing Act. You want to be able to respond to things on a case-by-case basis. Chances are, case by case, you're able to say, look, in this particular scenario, 2-bedroom makes more sense for your family. As long as you can back it up, you're not violating the Fair Housing Act. But if you're simply going to the family and saying, sorry, you just had a baby, you got to move to a 2-bedroom, you have to be able to back that up, okay? Pia also mentioned earlier with the building codes. Well, it's our policy 2 heartbeats per bedroom because that's what the county building codes say. All right, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You don't want to violate local law, but you also don't want to violate federal law. And right now we have a situation where we have a conflict of laws. The local law is saying you have to upgrade this family to a 2-bedroom apartment, whereas the Federal Fair Housing Act is saying you do not have to because there's no business reason behind it other than you might be violating the building codes. That's still going to be a situation where you want to bring that to our attention. You want to bring it to, have the family file a complaint because it might not be the housing provider that's violating the Fair Housing Act. It might be the building codes that are violating the Fair Housing Act. It might be the county that needs to change their laws so that they're more in line with what the Federal Fair Housing Act is trying to accommodate for. So hiding behind building codes will buy you time, but it's not the answer. The case doesn't end there just because of that situation. We mentioned the Keating memo. I'll read a couple notes here from it real quick. The Keating memo states that an occupancy standard of 2 persons per bedroom will generally be considered reasonable under the Fair Housing Act. Specifically, the memo addresses the problem of occupancy standards used as a pretext for family status discrimination. When the Office of General Counsel sent the Keating memo to HUD headquarters and Regional Counsel in 1991, Keating claimed that the 2 persons per bedroom standard was rebuttable. The memo also said that HUD officials should not use this standard alone to decide whether a landlord's occupancy standards are discriminatory. So if you ever have a client or referral that says my housing provider will not budge 2 people per bedroom and they said that that's the law, the Keating memo is very clear saying no. It's a foundation, it's a start, but we can move on from there. Similarly to what we talked about in previous sessions under the disability accommodations, housing providers are supposed to move into some sort of interactive process, okay? We see you have a family of 3 with a newborn, you're looking for the 1-bedroom apartment. Our policy says that would be 2 bedrooms, building codes say 2 bedrooms, let's figure this out. An outright denial is usually, again, a recipe for a violation of the Fair Housing Act. But some sort of interactive process, some sort of alternative solution is going to open the door to the housing provider saying, we did what we felt was best in our situation. We tried to work with the tenant, but we could not come to some sort of agreement. It's not a clear defense, but the idea of interacting with the tenant to make things right is a better move than just an outright denial. So what I'm going to do now, actually, I'm going to ask the audience right now, any questions about familial status? Because the next few slides I have, I'm going to pivot into kind of a recap of the Fair Housing Act and where do we go from here. You guys can unmute yourselves or put something in the chat if you have any questions about familial status.
Yep, and we'll take a moment, give people an opportunity. Feel free to use the chat or the Q&A, whatever is easiest. If you'd like to come off mute, do me a favor and raise your hand. I'll keep an eye on the attendee list, and if I see that your hand is raised, I will give you the opportunity to come off of mute.
I hit buttons and now I can't get it to go back up. Hang on. All right. Looks like we have.
Is something that came in through the Q&A.
Yeah. How do you learn the reason for an occupancy limit? Wouldn't that only come out in discovery? A lot of times housing providers will just say outright, I'm sorry, that's our policy, or the building codes tell us that. Now, as you know, doing legal research and defining health codes, building codes, it can be daunting. I know I spent last week trying to find a very specific health code on behalf of a client. I'm on Unicode. I'm looking all over the place. I can't find specific codes that say this is the policy, this is the actual code. A lot of times housing providers will just outright say the reason for our policy is that the building codes say so. But you bring up a great question. A lot of times we like to push back and say, oh, really? How? How do you know? How do you, the housing provider, know that that's what the building code says because you based your policy on it? Well, our corporate team found that out. You know, like, well, who found it? Who actually says that's the case? It could definitely come out in discovery, but a lot of times just a simple question is, let's figure this out now before it gets that far, can go a long ways, because both sides want to make sure that they're speaking on behalf of what the law actually says before taking any next steps. I think that's a great question, legal research and just simply asking. A lot of times it's the policy of the housing provider that they're going to be stubborn about as much as it is the building code. So they're going to hide behind the building code, even though they're really just hiding behind their own policy. Are there any other questions about familial status?
I don't see anyone with their hand
Okay.
raised, but feel free, folks. Oh, I think I raised my own hand just now. Feel free to.
I'd like to see the question. Okay.
Yeah, right. What's my question? Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll notice that
Yeah.
you've been taken off mute.
So what we wanted to kind of finish up these 6 sessions with is just a little conversation about why do we have discrimination? Where did it come from? And where does it go from here? I have a couple of bullet points, and I even have a short video that I'm hoping many of you have already seen, but many of you may have not. So I'm going to show it to you. But first, we talk about pre-civil rights laws. Landlords and banks saw that white married men, they saw them as the primary deserving candidates for housing. So we're talking now, 70, 80, 90 years ago, when renting and giving out bank loans was the the operations of landlords and banks. Discrimination was happening internally. These are just the folks that we want to give money to. These are the folks we want to give our housing to. Well, what that led to is more housing for white married men. And then that leads to generational stability and wealth amongst white families. So when you hit the starter gun and people say on your marks, get set, go, and you only let the white married men go first, and it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years before you allow anybody else to go, that race is unfair over time. So fast forward 60, 70 years into the future of that race, and you take a snapshot, it's no wonder most of the housing is, or at least home ownership is occupied by white married men because of generational stability, passing on homes, passing on wealth, and everything like that. That's just what's going on inside people's minds. As far as actual laws go, I'm guessing a lot of you are familiar with redlining, but I'm going to show a quick video here about it. It's comedic, but it's very educational. I highly encourage a lot of you to use this video. I have to, let me see here. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can pull it up here now. Yeah, so I clicked on it. I think there's going to be a short ad real quick, and then it'll move straight into it.
Showing up on the first page of Google might not be the best for everyone.
It's not this.
But for business owners, it is. Take My Vintages online store.
You know what?
It ranks for.
Let me see if I can do this.
There you go. You can skip
There
it.
we go. That's better. Okay. So I'm guessing a lot of you have seen that before. And let me make sure. Let me turn my camera back on. 1 second. Okay, I'm guessing some of you have seen it before. Many of you may have not, but you can see that housing discrimination was not just decisions by landlords one at a time. It was systemic. It was designed by law. Redlining was intentional and on purpose, and the wealth gap and the generational wealth gap continues because of laws from 60, 70 years ago. One of the other ways that we perpetuate housing discrimination is through stereotypes, just social interactions with one another. So stereotypes is the assumption of all based on the experience of a few, and we perpetuate them through jokes, ignorance, social, traditional media, et cetera, and so on. But one thing that I do want to point out is that there is some unique statistical phenomena that are starting to come to light in regards to how segregation and attitudes are starting to change. I actually started to notice this about 13 years ago. And so recently I did some research to learn if what I was noticing then is actually coming true today, and it is. There's this concept known as the coming out phenomenon. It's America's view on same-sex marriage had some very unique shifting from 2007 to 2016. And the way this went was about 2007 to 2009, America's opinion on same-sex marriage was about 55 to 60% against, 40 to 45% for. But around 2010, 2011, it started to shift. And I believe it was in 2011, 2012, we had our first American survey that showed 53% of Americans were for same-sex marriage and 47% were against. It was the first time we had flipped as a country our views on same-sex marriage. But when you dig deeper into those statistics and you look at the questions that the people who took the survey were asked, one of the questions was, do you have a close friend or family member who identifies as gay? And for those who said yes, the number of those people who said they are therefore also for same-sex marriage, the numbers like tripled and quadrupled. I saw one survey once that was like 96% said I am for same-sex marriage. Now that's not the ongoing statistic that you can hold me accountable for, but the research I've done recently shows that you are 2 or 3 times more likely to be for same-sex marriage if you have a close friend or family member who identifies as gay. What that says is that the more and more people who came out and people realized my cousin, my nephew, my son, my dad, my best friend, my colleague also is gay, it changes my attitude and my approach to this conversation. And so there's a 2018 study, an article called Gay Acquaintanceship and Attitude Towards Homosexuality, a Conservative Test by Daniel Della Posta. I recommend just reviewing it. It's long, it's scientific, it's research, it's a lot of data, but just the abstract alone is worth reading. That just recognizes that the more people recognize and get outside of their own shell, get outside of their own comfort zones and realize who they are in community with, the more likely they are to relieve themselves of their stereotypical attitudes and old ways of thinking. And so with that, how can we move forward with removing these stereotypes and removing the discrimination? Well, one of the things that is written into the 1968 Fair Housing Act is this very specific line about affirmatively furthering fair housing, AFFH. Some of you may have come across this before. In the 1968 Fair Housing Act, HUD is directed to ensure that the agency and its program participants proactively take meaningful actions to overcome patterns of segregation, promote fair housing choice, eliminate disparities and opportunities, and foster inclusive communities free from discrimination. So it's not enough to simply take a defensive role. It's not enough to simply enforce the act. You have to proactively go out and promote integrative living, diversity of living, more community with different types of people. It's not enough to just simply say we don't discriminate, but you must affirmatively further fair housing. if you're the recipient of HUD dollars, and it's probably a lesson we should all take in our own lives and work. How does that happen? Well, through presentations like this one here, education and outreach. And I encourage you all, I know that this audience is for during this boot camp is mostly attorneys with a lot of advocates as well, but it takes a lot of education and outreach. We have a lot of brochures that we would love to give to you to give out to your folks. The video I just showed you, the Adam Ruins Everything video, it has 7 million views. About 25 of those are me. Let's get that number up there. The more people that see it, the better off people are going to be in their awareness of what's going on. Share your stories. That is such a big one. If you are experiencing housing discrimination, or you have a friend that did and they're, allowing you to share their story, share those stories. The more people hear stories of discrimination, the more people are appalled that it's still happening, and the more we open ourselves up to having more of a compassionate response. We have to share those stories instead of hiding them. One of the topics we covered during this boot camp was immigrants in fair housing. A lot of immigrant families, like we mentioned in that session, don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to share their story. They don't want it to get out that they're causing a ruckus. That only perpetuates discrimination. The more people who are discriminating that get away with it, the more they're likely to do it. But if we share their stories, it's going to come to an end. And then that last bullet point I have there is make sure people are exercising their rights. File complaints. Don't hesitate. Now, don't file frivolous complaints. Don't make up fair housing violations where they're not there. But if the Fair Housing Act seems to be crossed, file that complaint, okay? Housing providers don't like having pending complaints against them. It puts everybody on edge. They have to call their attorneys. They have to have their property managers be on high alert. It's not a good feeling to have a HUD complaint pending against a housing provider. A lot of times those complaints can even just be withdrawn. You can go back to them and say, we'll withdraw it if you guys update your policies. If you guys, go through some fair housing training, like the one we're doing now. The more people that can be trained and educated on the Fair Housing Act, the better chance we have of preventing it from happening in the first place. In addition to filing complaints, request reasonable accommodations and modifications. If you're someone with a disability, or you know someone with a disability and they need that accommodation, ask for it. Exercise those rights. Challenge policies. Like we've said so many times on these boot camp sessions, if a housing provider comes back and says, sorry, that's our policy, no exceptions, challenge that policy. And then that last note there is something that we take pride in doing, is educating housing providers. We do a lot of these presentations for apartment associations, real estate offices, housing providers, and so on and so forth. Now, some of the presentations we do happens after the discrimination occurred, and part of their punishment or penalty is having to go through fair housing training. But we would rather get to them before they do the discrimination in the first place. So there's a lot of things that we can do to further fair housing. So that reaches the end of our boot camp. We really appreciate everyone's attendance, and we're curious what questions you guys have for us.
And while you all are thinking about, questions you might want to ask, remember you can raise your hand. We'll take you off mute so you can pose your questions out loud. I just want to say, Joe and Pia, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that, concluding call to action, and how we can actually, try to stop some trains before they're already off the rails. So folks, while you're thinking about your questions, I have dropped the CLE code into the chat. I'll read it out loud. That code is 240453 as in Nancy. One more time, just to take up some more airtime. 240453 as in Nancy. And this session is 1 general CLE credit and 1 marital and family law certification credit. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but a few other additional housekeeping matters to kind of give people the opportunity to gather their thoughts. As we mentioned earlier, this is our 2024 Fair Housing Training Boot Camp. This is session 6. So there are 5 other sessions that have been going on, or have been in the past month. And those will all be aggregated into one playlist on our YouTube channel. And it'll be the 2024 Fair Housing Training Bootcamp playlist where you'll be able to access these recordings as many times as you need, all in one area. The email that you will receive from Zoom, along with the recording for this and the CLE code, will also include a link to that playlist. That way you have that easy access right there for everything that you need. And so I don't see any questions in the chat. I think we'll sign off early. Can't be a complaint coming back from a holiday weekend. Joe, Pia, anything that you'd like to say? I know you've done quite a bit of talking, but if there's any last remarks, I'm happy to take them.
Just a big thank you to everybody. This has been a blast for us. It's so fun to have a large audience to get to give these presentations to. So thank you all so much for your consistent attendance. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, just thank you. This has been great.
Awesome. Well, I will also echo that and say thank you again to Joe and Pia, but also thank you to all of you. Your attendance here shows, the work that you're trying to do out there in the community. And, we are right there with you with our Fair Housing Project, fighting that good fight. So thank you to everybody here and everybody in the legal aid and pro bono work for standing up for the rights of people regularly and daily. It's a very tough battle, but without folks like you, there would be no rights to protect. So thank you for all that you do, and everybody have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.